It's a combination. Lately, I've seen more upper management for things like SOX compliance or some kind of compliance issue. Now it's not so much IT doing it, although they have a hand in it because they support the tools in the network. I've found more and more it's coming from upper management saying, okay, we can no longer ignore not having a retention policy and policies associated with our content. Yeah, I can't remember the last IT-driven request we've had. And that's where that team piece comes in, because you do want to include all of the people that would support this. IT is huge, and typically IT has their own ideas on how content management needs to be run. And that's a challenge, and you have to, and that's why it's important that that team you put together has representatives from everywhere. Otherwise, you'll be struggling with it. The team plus management has to say, you guys are going to do this. Now, we're going to give you the power, but if you don't have management approval, then you're not going to get very far anyway. When we do an enrollment or a rollout of any product or anything that we're doing, we try to engage the people actually doing the work as soon as we can, right? So, for example, we had an AP project that we're doing. 3 months before we're supposed to go live, right, we brought in our first round of review by actual AP processors. And we spent 2 months working with them. So when we go live and we turn it on, they go, who told you this would work for us, right? And it's the same idea. So if you can, part of, I don't know if I included the SMEs in there, but the subject matter experts, or the people doing the actual work, are huge in that early stage. And that's why we'll go to a department, and again, a friendly one is always a great way to start. And then you actually say, all right, let's go talk to the people doing the work, and we're going to test this model and make sure it's going to work for you. And you can even do some of the, mock up some screens. There's some tools that you can use to give them a touch and feel of what they're going to be doing. And it's very valuable. It's an agile approach to development. They used to call it rapid prototyping. The terms have changed over the years. They all basically mean the same thing. Bring that end user in as soon as you can and give them an iterative approach to making this a product or an interface that they're comfortable with. So the challenge is that every department's documents are important, and you need to put that out there. If upper management has said we are going to do this, I think there's a happy medium where, for example, there'll be a set of attributes and document types that apply throughout the enterprise, period. You always start with that. Here is if you think of it as a container, I have a container that says, at the top level, I'm going to gather this information always. It applies to everybody. You guys can't argue with that, right? Now, I go to this department, and they have their special important document types as well as attributes. So part of the job of the vendor or the content product you're bringing in is to disguise that they're really getting exactly what they want, right? Without having to build that. So let's identify a handful of attributes that you feel like, okay, they listen to me, and I can get the documents the way I'm doing them right now. And it appears that the documents haven't changed, right? So part of that is some behind the scenes architecture and how you present that model, or how you build that model to represent document types that make that department feel good. The other part of that is building an enrollment process. So part of the enrollment process is saying, I've got a kind of a template that says, here are the main attributes and the document types that we have to have, because this is the way the business works. And now let's go in and let's get your department up to speed by saying, you've got these attributes, what other ones do you want to collect? And by the way, for every attribute you collect, you're going to have to enter that attribute, right? So that always is an incentive, is to say, well, you want 25 attributes? All yours, but you have to enter them. If you don't put it in there, you'll never get it out, right? So there's some things that are a little give and take. So it's been my experience, if you can present it in such a way that it feels like they're getting it the way they want, then you don't have quite the roadblock. A couple different ways. So we lean towards one tool because of the ease of use and how nice it is to plug and play. And those tools are getting better and better as we speak. You know, they're just growing. Taxonomy, that's tough.
I think the worst case, sorry.
Yeah, but it can be done. So taxonomy represents what you're capturing and what you're storing. So oftentimes we'll put our analytics around the capture process, right? What does that look like? So I'm bringing in an email, all right, and it's got an attachment. What kind of attachment is it? So now I'm starting to see what I'm getting through my emails. You know, oh, it's a flyer for, you know, the monthly birthdays that are happening, you know, or it's an invoice, or, you know, it's a contract. So that's where we start looking at our ingestion point. That's where our analytics really kick in for like a taxonomy. Even though it's really not picking on the taxonomy that we've stored, we know what's coming in. Now when we push it to the repository, we can say, okay, when we ingested it, we had, you know, 200 document types that were invoices, and then at the end, we processed 180. Okay, so what happened to those 80? And are 20 of those invoices, do they need a different kind of document type, right? Maybe we haven't identified that yet because it got held up as an exception. So those are places where we find you can plug those metrics in, and then you can define, you know, depending on your tool set, you can actually build metrics that pick on specific things, like how long did it take for the processor to validate that this is an invoice. How many, if you're doing some kind of extraction off of documents, if you capture something and you're extracting data off of it, what did I extract and how valid was it? Is the content that I'm receiving from my clients, am I giving them incentive to send me good documents, right? One of our biggest challenges when we're doing the capture piece and we're getting things electronically is people still faxing information or sending something under 200 DPI to us, and then we're supposed to recognize what this is. Visually you can, but the programs, the extraction routines just don't know what to do with it. So one of our clients went from 1 year about 80% paper, 20% electronic, and they gave the customers incentives to send everything electronic. It's a mortgage company. They're now 98% electronic because it saved the vendors, I don't know, $45,000 a year to ship paper, right? You can imagine that mortgage documents. So the vendors were all thrilled about this, but those are the kind of things too that we look, those metrics show, right? The question was, do we watch log files that show user access and the retrieval rates and what they're looking for? And we don't specifically look at log files, although those are tracked, but we actually look at the interactions when they're doing the lookup. Now again, this is through, we've got metrics on things like the interface we built or the tool set that they're using. We watch that and how many interactions. So in a way we are watching the logs, and the better analytics tools are real time essentially. So what it does is every so many seconds or so many minutes, data is pulled from the production world up into a space where all the analytics are used. So running reports and doing your searches are all done outside of production, even though it pretty much mirrors what production's doing. Maybe a little bit of latency there, but depending on how often you refresh it. I'm a big believer in using the product out of the box. If that product should, if you've sold me a product, I should be able to plug it in, turn it on, configure it, and we should be able to start using it. Minimize your customizations. Customization you add requires somebody to do it, and then somebody to maintain it. So I think there's a number of products that are emerging. You got the high end, which is the FileNet Documentums. You've got kind of middle of the road Laserfish. There's also some emerging products that are coming up. They're all web-based. A little slow, but they're out there. Easy to use. That's a tough one. I would say, you definitely want a web-based delivery system, because get rid of the client. The clients add IT nightmares. They don't want to deal with it. They want a browser-based, so when an update happens, they don't have to go to everybody's workstation and update it, right? It's just part of it. So I'd certainly give you some ideas there. That's where having your footprint is really nice, because now I can go out and say, all right, I'm putting out an RFQ, let's see who shows up. And part of my requirements is web-based. Okay, and I want the interface to be pretty clean to start with. I don't want to be customizing it. Customizations aren't necessarily bad, but if they're built as a layer rather than part of that product, now the concept is that may change, and there might be a little adjustment to your layer depending on how that product changes. But the idea is, if you're going to do a customization, make sure it's somewhere on top of it and not integrated with it, right? So it feeds it. But that's a good point. Customizations cost you money. So from my experience, I measure it by how quickly it gets rolled out. So let's say I have 25 departments in my business, right? And I roll out the first one, and that first department, my friendly department that embraces me and likes me, they start saying, hey, this works really well, right? They start spreading the word that way. That's the plan anyway. And it's been my experience that with that enrollment process, now it becomes a cookie cutter type approach, where they still get a little bit of their own special, important, these are the most important documents in the business, and our common set, right, that take us into the enterprise content management system. So successful ones for me, the departments are rolled out quickly. You could, depending on how big it is, it could be within a couple weeks, maybe a month, depending on what you have to do to maybe build special attribute screens. If they have 25 attributes, it may take a little more time. But what that tells me is that the enrollment process is good, and the departments are embracing it, because the next one, you start getting people to line up and say, we want to be next, right? Priorities change, and that to me is successful. And when it's not successful. When you roll out that first one, all you hear about it is, I can't believe they're making us do this, right? Or words along those lines. Sure. And lots of beverages flow. So, any other questions? All right, well, thank you. Appreciate it.